Raymond. Empower your purpose.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our One Question With series. I'm Raina Saltzman, and I am on the marketing team here at Raymond. And I am so excited to be joined by Chris Singh, who is a business advisor out of our Ann Arbor office. And Chris has been a subject matter expert for us across the firm, and she recently wrote an article for us called FOMO, The Devil is in the Detail. And today we want to take some time with you, Chris, to dig into some of that content a bit further and ask you one more question that leaders across all organizations should understand better. So Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Nice to be with you.
Now, are you ready to dig in and let's get this question answered?
And I hope I will be helpful, but I'm ready.
Awesome. The one question that we really wanted to talk to you about today is, what are the top 3 real-time financial data points that leaders should understand, and what they should know on a daily basis? But before we dig into that question, I'm going to break it out a bit further, and I want to start with why. So why is it important for leaders to understand the real-time financial data? Can you tell us a bit more about that?
I will. So running an organization, kind of like parenting, is controlled chaos, and you want to have as much control as possible. So we talk a lot about financial statements and reports and things that aren't always ready in a moment's notice, and that can be overwhelming for leaders, particularly not accountants. And few business leaders or organizational leaders get to their position because they really love accounting, or they really love debits and credits, or they really love poring over financial statements. They don't. They need some quick, reliable information to help control the chaos around them. And then if they're able to gain some control, they have the flexibility to make decisions that are in the best interest of their organization.
Awesome. Now, as we go into this, you mentioned that there are the top 3 real-time financial data points. Can you start to list those out and tell us what those?
Because again, looking at everything on financials and can be overwhelming. So I have 3 favorites. Those 3 are your cash position, your debt obligations, and your revenue target.
Wow. Can you explain those a little bit more, and what those are, just so if someone may be a little unfamiliar what that means to the organization?
Sure. So your cash position, lots of people like to say cash is king. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you have to have a lot of cash to show that your organization is doing well, but you need to know what it is at any moment's notice. And with technology now, there's no excuse for leaders not to have ready online access to what is in the bank account. Again, it doesn't mean that not having a big stack of money there is a bad thing, but you need to know what you have. You need to know how then you're able to get more if you need it. You need to know where some of the large outlays are going and when. So you need a plan. You need to know what cash is, what your position is, and then what the ins and outs are going to be in the short term.
Now, do you have any examples that you can share with us where you've worked with clients where this has been beneficial? Can you share those with us if you do?
Sure. I have one client that I work very closely with, and their largest expense all month long is payroll. And they happen to pay all their people just once a month, and it's on the last day of the month. So that is their largest fixed amount of cash that needs to be ready to roll at the end of the month. Yet their funding and their revenue goes up and down. So if this company doesn't know how to get the right amount of cash ready when the payroll button is pressed, the 40 people that work for them, and their families are detrimentally affected. So that's really payroll time, end of the month. That money has to be put together, and that has to be managed. So that's a big thing.
Yeah, and I think that can be relatable to any organization. Understanding and having that data ready for them. I think everyone wants to make sure that they're getting paid and that their employees are getting paid.
The chaos that would cause, just if one quick slip, and again, this is their biggest expense, even if it's off by $10, the whole thing doesn't go through, and it's just a detrimental effect on this organization.
Wow. Yeah, I guess I don't even think about that. Even if it's off by $10, the effect that can have. on
Well,
the
and their
well-being.
employees don't know that that's a risk, so it can't be a risk because their employees need to focus on doing their jobs, not worrying if payroll is going to show up at the end of the month.
Yeah, wow, that is a very important thing, and so that makes sense, and that is something that I'm glad that you brought up as a very important piece that leaders need to understand, and that they should know on a daily basis when it comes to those real-time financial details. So appreciate you bringing that up.
Sure. And again, just one last plug on the cash.
Yeah.
Leaders, even if this isn't your job to, keep track of the finances or do bank reconciliations, you can all have online access to the accounts. And you can be able to click in at 8 o'clock every morning and see what cash is in there. So there's really no excuse not to do that. So please make sure that you have that accessible, or at a minimum, a very trusted level of member of management is readily looking at that information and has that cash balance accessible at all times.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And thank you so much, Chris. Is there any parting words, anything else that you'd like to lay out there for us?
Regarding cash, I have a couple other data points I talk about, but cash, yeah. I think that says it.
Perfect. All right, let's get into the next one.
Yes. So the second one is your debt obligations. So who do you owe money to, and when do you owe it? And what happens if it's not paid on time? What are the consequences? So again, this is something that if it's missed, and it could be a small miss, it could have detrimental consequences of default, or maybe it doesn't. So you need to understand who you're paying, on what cycle, what flexibility you have with it, and what plan do you have in place to make sure those are being met. Their debt obligations take all kinds of forms. Some business leaders are putting money in themselves and funding their businesses. Some have banks funding them. Some have various third-party institutions that have some larger detrimental effects if those obligations aren't met. So that's one of the, in addition to payroll, at least in a lot of organizations, your regular debt obligations are a big deal, and they could have a very long-term effect on the organization negatively if those obligations aren't met.
Yeah. Are there any stories or any examples that you have for that?
Many of our small businesses, I tend to work with a lot of small businesses, some of them startups, where the founders and the business owners do have to put their own personal assets on the line to guarantee those. And so that's an example where if those obligations aren't met, it not only puts the company at risk, but it could put some of the executives or the founders personally at risk too. It's really nothing that should be messed with, and it's a very important item to know.
Absolutely. Now let's go into the third data point that you had mentioned.
Revenue tracking. So what most organizations run their books, their financials on a monthly basis. So monthly, how much revenue do you have to book or collect in order to pay all of your expenses? Some folks call it their nut or their target or their bogey. But what do you need? And that is something that you can track throughout the month, weekly, daily, to know that are you trending in the right direction, so that by the end of the month, think back to my client that pays payroll once a month, are they on track to generate enough revenue through the month so that when payroll comes, they can fund it? And if not, you have to be able to take corrective action. And so you need a plan for that. Revenue doesn't always come in magically as you want it, but you can't be surprised, and you can't wait until the month closes. It's something you have to track and to follow on a very regular basis.
I like that you say you can't always wait until the month closes to see that data. Yeah. And I just think about how that impacts planning, how that impacts strategy. Even each of the different areas, the data points that you talked about, payroll, debt obligations, revenue checking. These are major pieces that will impact planning and strategy for the organization if they are not thought of on a, like you said, daily, weekly basis, and not just month close.
Waiting for the end of the month or waiting to see what your accountant says the month looked at is really too late, because you're already into the next cycle. And that's something that our CPA industry and really our firm has come leaps and bounds as far as supporting our clients. We're spending much more time helping them keep up their financial information on a day-to-day basis
Mm.
than waiting for months to close and then numbers to come over the wall and turning into financial statements to really put in a drawer. That really is the way of the past. And we would much rather stay in the present with you, which is where we're spending more and more efforts.
Awesome. And I know that, like you said, our team is really working on making sure that we're helping organizations do that. And it's continuing to grow. So are there any final words, or based off of these 3 data points, what would be the next step, based off of this conversation that you and I are having? If leaders are hearing this, and they're wondering, what would be my next step on making sure, do we have, payroll? Do we have the debt obligations? Do we have that revenue checking? Like, what would be a next step for them as they walk away from here? What would be, a question, or what could they do?
If you don't know what your cash is, if you don't know what your debt is, and if you don't know what you need to make on a monthly basis, reach out and call Raymond and ask what technology and what tools are available to help track that. I think sometimes organizations, they're using some of the same old resources and tools. They're spending so much time working in their business, they aren't able to look and see what's out there. That's another great thing that Raymond as a partner can help you with. We are staying on the bleeding edge of technology, and we are throwing technology around a lot of these items so that we can help you, arm you with these tools to make sure you're staying on top of things, so that you can control the organized chaos around your organizations and have the flexibility to make the best decisions with real-time data every day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chris.
You're welcome.
And leaders, if you are looking to see if you even have access to your payroll, debt obligations, revenue checking, we have advisors here at Raymond who are willing and ready to work with you. And like Chris said, we have the technology to help equip you to make those informed decisions for your organization daily, weekly, and throughout the year.
Give us a call to help. It would make our day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us for our One Question with Chris Saint.